Welcome everybody here in the space, and welcome everybody in the digital universe. Thank you all for coming and joining tonight for this auspicious concert. For us, it's a bittersweet moment. It's the end of a show that we have been really enjoying having up here, Moki Cherry's work in the space. And it's a process that took us about 5 years to put together, and was a joy at every stage, maybe aside from the one when we had to postpone the show for a year. That was a little trying, but it was really great to have the show up, and we're very honored to have this work in our space. Along the way, we got to work pretty extensively with Moki Cherry's daughter, Nana Cherry, and her granddaughter, Naima Carlson, and we thank them most profusely for all of their patience and incredible insight and assistance in thinking through how to put the show together and how to represent the work to the best of our ability. I want to thank our friends at Blank Forms, Lawrence, who's here with us today, for having put such a great show together in New York that preceded this show, with a slightly different focus, and it just shows how rich the work is, that it could be two shows in rapid succession that would have very little crossover in terms of actual work, and would and nevertheless would be both extremely rich. So there's still a lot of work to do on this material, and it's super exciting. Along the way, we had the chance to go visit the small schoolhouse that Don and Moki bought in 1970 in southern Sweden, a small town called Toggarp. And that was a really kind of life-changing experience for Jim Dempsey and me. And it's interesting to reflect on that just before a concert that includes Hamid Drake, because Hamid Drake lived at that house in 1978. So there's a lot of things, a lot of ways that these circles are completed that we don't necessarily anticipate. And we knew immediately that Hamid would have to be part of the equation here to celebrate this with music, and you can't really have this work come together and not have a musical celebration. Naima Carlson sent a statement that she wanted to be read, and I'm going to read it for her, and then we'll get the music started. It is with gratitude and regret that I write this for the closing of the first Moki Cherry solo exhibition of paintings and tapestries in the United States. Our family is so grateful for this opportunity to share and celebrate Moki's work with others, but we are also hugely disappointed to be unable to travel from Europe due to current restrictions. It sounds like the exhibition has had an energy of enthusiasm and positivity throughout, and it all makes it worth it to know that Moki's work continues to bring this energy to people and spaces. Her drive was to learn and interpret the histories and approaches of humans to create decorative and functional art for both survival and ceremonial purposes. Moki's textiles, ceramics, educational tools, and theatrical creations are ancient and modern all at once. They look towards spiritual expansion and awareness while simply being part of everyday life. I am only just getting a grasp of Moki's artistic vision and endless curiosity, and working with others to make her art more available is a joy. It is wonderful that Corbett versus Dempsey have brought these works to Chicago, and I am eternally grateful to everyone who has come to see the exhibition and to this event tonight, which is all of you. We are super, super excited to present Ken Vandermark, Hamid Drake, playing the music of Don Cherry.
Just real quickly, there's so much material to pull from. Don Cherry composed. It was a daunting task to just focus on a few of them. For those of you that are also fans of the music, I decided to cull pieces from the All the New Dreams Quartet, the duo record with Ed Blackwell, El Corazon, and from the album Complete Communion. And thanks for being here. We're just going to play, I think. This is Hamid Drake.
Ken Vandermark.
The first piece is called Solidarity, and then we went into Elephantasy, which has about 3,000 themes. I had time to transcribe a few of those.
Maybe 4,000. I'd like to say something if it's okay. This is a very emotional experience for me. I was saying to Ken earlier that I was thanking him and John for and Jim for giving me the opportunity to play with Ken and to do some of Don Cherry's music amidst these tapestries, because I had the good fortune the summer of 1978, to live amongst these. I just want to give you a short background on how that happened. I was in a group that started in 1977. It's called Mandingo Griot Society, and it featured a kora player from the Gambia, Jelly Fode Musasuso. And it was probably one of the first groups to use the traditional Mandingo Malian music with the kora in taking the music and putting it in a kind of R&B, blues, reggae sort of setting, and at the same time paying close attention to the tradition also. And we were working around Chicago, and we were playing at a club. One of the clubs we were playing at, a man walks in and he says, "I've been coming to see you guys for quite some time. I really like, the music in the group." And he said, "My name is Bruce Kaplan, and I own a record label called Flying Fish, and I would like you guys to record on my label." And so we were very hardy and arrogant at the time. So we said, yeah, we'll do that, only under one condition. And he said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, we want to have someone, a special guest on the record who is famous and also who's very much involved in world music." And so he said, "Hey, Angel, all right." And so he said, "Who's that?" And we said, "Don Cherry." And he said, "Okay." We said, "He lives in Sweden, so you have to fly him to Chicago and pay him very well." And he said, "No problem." So Don, he came to Chicago, and he was very much into this whole Mandingo tradition because he was playing the instrument called the Dusunguni from Mali. It's like a type of harp. And we all just really fell in love with each other. And so my family at the time, my oldest daughter, Ananda, she was almost 2, and Shanti was like 5 months. And so after we did the recording, well, first we invited him to our place, and their mother, Kamal, she made this really beautiful traditional, like Indian meal, aloo gobi, it's called. And so he liked that very much. And then he said, "Hamid," he said, "Man, I would like you and your family to come to Sweden, to move to Sweden and stay with, me and my family, He said, "My daughter Nana's there, my son Eagle-Eye, and Moki. You'll get to see some of her tapestries and live with those." So we said, "Yeah, of course." And so my mother, she gave us money to pay for a one-way ticket on Icelandic Air, and Adam Rudolph, he went with us also. So we flew from Chicago to Reykjavik, Iceland, then from there to Luxembourg. From Luxembourg, we took a train to Munich. From Munich, we took another train to Copenhagen, and then Don picked us up in Copenhagen. At that time, there was no bridge connecting Denmark and Sweden. And so Adam, he had his 2 congas in cases. We had like 2 suitcases filled with mostly Pampers. And I had my cymbals and tabla. And so Don picked us up. We took a boat from Denmark to Malmö, Sweden. And that was the border crossing. And when we got there, the first thing customs, they asked us is if we had a return ticket. And we said, no, we don't, because we didn't know how long we were going to stay there. Then they wanted to know how much money we had, you know. And then the second thing they wanted to see was Don's residency card. And so he pulls it out, they look at it, and they said, I'm sorry, sir, but your residency has expired, you know. And, but they knew who he was, you know. He was pretty well known in Sweden at that time, so they let us go. And so we drove in his car to Toggarps that John was speaking about earlier, Toggarp Skola. They lived in pretty much in the forest in southern Sweden. When we got there, Moki, she came out and she said, I'm so happy you're here, so excited that you're here. I cooked one of my favorite dishes for you all, Swedish meatballs. You know? And at that time, we were all vegetarians. And my daughters had never, ever, they had never tasted meat in their life, you know. So what do you say in a situation like that? We said, oh, thank you so much, perfect, you know. So we ate, we didn't get sick, anything like that. And we spent about 6 months there. And it was such a, I mean, there were always musicians and visual artists always passing through, like all the time, and staying there. Ananda, Shanti, Imam Kamal and I, we stayed in these like kind of like houses they had in the back. And Adam, he stayed in the main house. And every morning we'd have a tradition of, you know, coffee and a type of Swedish bread called knickknick. Not knickknick, I'm sorry, knickknick bread. Knickknick is a smoke, you know, and cheese. And then we go into the big rehearsal room and start, you know, learning his music, you know, and playing music. And all these different musicians were coming through. And towards the end of our stay there, we did a tour with Don of Europe with bass player Charlie Hayden and a Swedish musician that was living in Toggarps, Dudu Goyan, tabla player Trila Gertu, and Adam Rudolph, and myself and Don. And there was a magician who traveled with us, a French guy, but he went by the name of Abdul. And so we got to live amongst these tapestries. And at the time, I mean, when we first saw them, I mean, I'd seen them on record covers, of course, but to be with them and to live amongst them, it was so amazing. And to see Moki working on these things. And at the time, I was pretty young, so you know, you take things like that for granted, you know. And at the time, we really didn't understand the total and complete value, you know, of what she was doing and her great artistry. You know, so it's very touching to be amongst these beautiful works of art that you know, lived with for 6 months, and then her being in the process of always creating. And I was telling Ken earlier that this is very special occasion for me because I toured with Don quite a bit, but also did his last tour with him. Myself, Don, wonderful saxophonist named Carlos Ward, and a bass player, Mark Elias. And he was very sick, you know, at that time. And but he never canceled the concert or failed to do, you know, his best on the bandstand, you know. And whenever, you know, he couldn't quite get what he wanted from the trumpet, he would always put, you know, his mute in, his pocket trumpet, and the most amazing sound, you know, would come out. And some of those trips, toured with him a lot. Like I said, Moki would come with us sometimes. And there's one interesting story. I toured West Africa with Don. It was a U.S. French State Department tour. And Moki, she created these tapestries, but she was also an amazing seamstress. And she would make these amazing clothes for Don. You know, it's one of them there. You know, and he had like a duffel bag full of these clothes. And but when we hooked up to do the tour, he was wearing this like black pinstripe suit, you know. And the funny thing was, he had all of these beautiful clothes in the duffel bag, but he never wore them, you know, on the tour, you know. And I said, man, you know, Moki, you got all her beautiful clothes here. Why aren't you wearing them? He said, well, he said, I just feel good in this pinstripe suit, you know. And I said, well, how do you, I said, it's hot here. We're in Mali, we're in Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Benin. I said, how do you keep it from wrinkling, you know? And he showed me his technique, you know, putting it under the mattress, you know, really nicely. And he was also, I say this with a sense of humor also, he was also the cause of me getting malaria when I was in Mali, because he came into my room when we were in Bamako, and we were told like to keep the screens, you know, closed, you know, because of the mosquitoes and stuff. And they said also, if you're washing your underwear out, don't hang them up like on a banister and stuff, because flies come along, they lay eggs in them, and then they'll get inside of you, all of this stuff. And so he came into my room and he said, man, Hamid, I like your view. So he opened the screen, you know, and I saw a mosquito fly in, you know. I'm like, oh, shit, you know. But, you know, it's Don, one of my mentors, you know, we idolized him. So I couldn't say, man, you know, you know, at this mosquito room. So that evening, we went to the bar that was on the top of the hotel. It was the only hotel in Bamako, the capital at the time. And musicians would play there, and, you know, all kind of things would go on. So we had a nice night of drinking beer and all that. And I came back to my room, went to sleep. I woke up at about 4 o'clock because my lip felt really strange, you know. So I get up and I go look in the mirror in the bathroom, and my lip is like out to here, you know. And so I was like, man, this effing mosquito bit me, you know. And so, I mean, I'm ashamed to say this now, but I hunted the mosquito down, you know. And I found him. I found him. And he left a splatter on the wall like the size of my hand, you know. But I never told Don about that, you know, never mentioned it to him. And I really didn't get sick until we were in the Cameroon. We were with a trio that was headed by the great, one of my masters, great drummer Kenny Clark, you know. And there was a club in the hotel that we were staying in, and Kenny was playing there with trio, organ trio, guitar, drums, and organ. And so the guy who owned the club in the hotel, he invited us to go to a lunch where up in Victoria, upper part of Cameroon, where his mother lived. And so on the way back, it was, I mean, Cameroon at the time, it was a place where, you know, if you, especially where we were, if you walked a block, you would be dripping in sweat, you know. And so on the way back down, I felt like I was in Chicago in the dead of January. I was just freezing, you know, but it was like 100 degrees out, you know. But so Don, he, I said we were going to go out to eat and go listen to some music, and I said, man, I'm not feeling too well, so I'm going to stay at the hotel. And this brother, this guitar player that I had met the day before, his name was Zumi. My door was cracked open to my room because he came to pick me up so we could go out. He kind of knocked on the door. There was no response, and so he came in and he saw me and took one look at me. He said, malaria, you know. And he stayed with me. It was amazing for the whole night, you know, because I'd have to crawl to the bathroom, and he would take like, you know, like an orange and squeeze the juice of it into my mouth, you know, and so I could have some hydration. And he stayed with me until the morning, you know, and after that day, never saw him again. You know, it's really, really kind of amazing. So, Moki, she, I saw her maybe 5 or 6 months before she made her transition, you know, and we spoke a lot about, you know, our time together in Sweden, and she shared some things that I'll keep to myself. What Don said about me, you know, which and Nana Vasconcelos, the percussionist from Brazil, he was there with us. This was in Sardinia, where we were, you know, and in Cagliari, not Cagliari, but Santana Aresi, where they were doing a tribute to Don Cherry, and the whole family was there, you know, Nana, Eagle-Eye, Naima, Moki, and some of the other grandkids. And she said some things that Don had said that, I mean, really kind of brought me to tears, and things I didn't believe. I couldn't believe this. He said that about me. And so Nana Vasi was, you know, shaking his head like yes. So Don and Moki, because his music influenced, you know, the Tapestries, and the Tapestries influenced his music. You know, they were like this team, and it was amazing to see them together, but also to see the type of courage and strength that she had, because as great as Don was as an artist, on the human level, he wasn't always the easiest person to to live with, especially as a couple. But it showed the greatness of the Divine Mother, you might say, you know, the Divine Feminine. And I think Moki, not only with her tapestries, but just with her her wisdom, really contributed so much to the great music that Don Cherry created that we've all have been able to enjoy, you know. So I think she is a signpost for art in general, visual arts in particular, and this great tapestry work. And also, when it's said that there's usually a great goddess, you know, behind every so-called great man, I think it's really true, you know. And I saw that with Moki, and she was always kind of in the background in a way, you know. Of course, people paid more attention to Don, you know, he's Don Cherry, than they did quite, you know, to her. So to see her work being honored now, you know, here and in many other places, it's really wonderful and great to, you know, to see that. She was a great musician herself too, but of course most of the light was on Don, you know. But Moki Cherry was just as great, you know. She just happened to be at the time and I say this with great respect, she just happened at the time to be in a female body, you know, and all the attention was given to him in his male body, you know. But so the two of them are really etched in my heart and memory, you know, forever. And what Naima said and what you read is very, very true, you know. And she is a great artist herself too, you know, the whole Cherry family. And so Moki, it's a legacy that Moki and Don have left for us. Like, it's a legacy that they left together, you know. And those of you that aren't so familiar with his music, I would say you definitely, I mean, check it out, because stylistically he did a lot of things, you know, not just things in the so-called jazz world, but R&B, so-called world music. I mean, just about everything under the sun he was involved in. And since his passing, I've met so many musicians that have been so influenced, you know, by him. Even someone like a friend of ours, Peter Brötzmann, was telling me an amazing story of how Don was the one who kind of gave him the go-ahead, you know, to do what he does, what Peter does, you know. And after people saw Peter playing with Don, you know, finally there was some type of acceptance for him, for Peter, you know. And Don totally encouraged him to just do what you do and be true to what you do. So, and I think that's really a message for all of us, you know, no matter what we're involved in, you know, do what we do, be true to what we do, and just try and do the best that we can, and so there's so much more to say about them, but I've been known to be a talkaholic, so I'll stop here. But I'm just very grateful to be able to do this with Ken, and in this gallery, Corbett, Dempsey, in this gallery to be here and to see these tapestries. It just brings back so many precious memories, so thank you, John and Ken.
Thanks for sharing that. It's really wonderful to hear a bunch of stuff that I haven't even heard before. I'm going to conclude with two more pieces. The first is the title piece from the album El Corazon, and we'll conclude with another Don Cherry piece that he played with Old and New Dreams called Guinea. So thank you very much for being here. Thanks, John and Jim and everybody at the gallery, all of you, Moki Cherry, Don Cherry, and of course, Hamid Drake.